A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to PlanesTV's live coverage from Ostrava Airport in the Czech Republic of NATO Days and the Czech Air Force Days 2022. I'm Ben Dunnell. I'm delighted to be at this event for the first time, providing you with commentary for the English language live stream that's planned over the weekend. And indeed, we're going to bring you some rehearsal action this afternoon. Hope you're having a good Friday. And if you've been watching up to now, hope you've been enjoying your time with us. There is much, much more to come over the next 2 days at this air show, which definitely counts among the best in mainland Europe in terms of presenting modern military aviation at its best. And we have an outstanding array of NATO and other countries represented here this year. Of course, these are very significant times for the NATO alliance, and perhaps it's no wonder, therefore, that participation should be at such a high level for this 22nd edition of NATO Days, certainly one of the largest yet seen. As you can see from the footage currently on your screens, we've just experienced a pretty heavy shower passing over the airport, but it has now largely gone through, and we're going to see the first of 3 rehearsals that we plan, if all goes according to the schedule, to bring you live here from Ostrava this afternoon. And it's one of the most spectacular of all European fast jet displays. A multiple award winner at the Royal International Air Tattoo. And this is going to be, cloud-based permitting, an absolutely dramatic performance, and certainly we expect to see some pretty impressive vortices and condensation effects off the Boeing F/A-18C Hornet of the Finnish Air Force. In case you've only just joined us, or if you've either not been to or not seen footage from NATO Days before, quite an unusual show site layout. The F/A-18 getting airborne down the airport's main runway, but the display line runs perpendicular to that. So we'll be seeing the F/A-18 along with most of the other aircraft repositioning to make their first run in at pretty much 90 degrees on to the main runway. The F/A-18C solo display from the Finnish Air Force this year, being provided by Fighter Squadron 31, part of Karelian Air Command, based at Rehearsals, and at the controls this year is Captain Alexei Ritvos. 2 squadrons of Hornets in service with the Finnish Air Force under the operational control of wings that are organised on a regional basis, one of them stationed at Rovaniemi within the Arctic Circle, the other further south at Rehearsals. Just as has been practiced for many years by the Finnish Air Force, the intention is that in times of war they'd also be able to operate from highway strips in case of their main operating bases being put out of action. Looks like he may, initially at least, be opting for his low-level show. Indeed, coming in for an inverted pass. Before yo-yoing back towards the display line on the 45-degree angle. this lower version of the Finnish Hornet display, at least thus far, omitting some of the very impressive pirouette manoeuvres that make full use of the upgraded flight control software available on the Finnish FA-18s. But they're transitioning out of that barrel roll into the slow speed pass. There are 62 Hornets in Finnish service, 55 of them being single-seat C models such as this, all of which were licensed built in Finland by the Patria company. They've been through a couple of midlife upgrades, the first of which improved the aircraft's air-to-air capabilities, the second of which upgraded the aeroplane from standard F-18 fighter configuration to the much more common FA-18 multi-role air-to-air and air-to-ground configuration, which was completed across the fleet in 2015. But of course, for the Finnish Hornet force, given its geographical location, the Quick Reaction Alert QRA air defence task has been of increasing importance in recent months. And there, a very, very hard pull-up at display centre and pushing over. Almost akin to the sort of Cobra manoeuvres that we saw performed by the Sukhoi Su-27 first on the Western airshow circuit in the late 1980s, when that mighty Soviet-built fighter first appeared in the West. And indeed, the more modern Su-35 descendant of those early Su-27s is among the Russian Air Force types that Finnish Air Force Hornets have recently encountered around the fringes of their country's airspace over the Gulf of Finland and the Baltic Sea. Others have included MiG-31 Foxhound long-range interceptors, A-50 Mainstay airborne early warning aircraft, and Tu-160 Blackjack strategic bombers. Finland has also recently been conducting bilateral exercises on a regular basis with US military air assets in the region. This aircraft has now been the tip of the Finnish Air Force's spear since June 1995, when the first aircraft were delivered. However, the search for a replacement has now been concluded. In fact, this took place last year, with the Lockheed Martin F-35A Lightning II being the chosen option. Finland is buying 64 of those aircraft. Deliveries to start in 2025 and run through until 2030. So the Hornets still have a little time left in service. But the days of this aircraft are now numbered in Finnish Air Force service. Nonetheless, it remains an exceptionally capable platform. Let's hope over the 2 weekend days that on at least one of those occasions we get to enjoy the full show by this aeroplane. Having seen it practice earlier on this morning, it really is a quite outstanding spectacle. But that in itself, that flat show, immaculately flown. As I mentioned earlier, in the hands of Captain Alexei Ritvos from Fighter Squadron 31 of Karelian Air Command within the Finnish Air Force. The Boeing FA-18C Hornet having completed its sequence. And there it is on final approach. A quick reminder, if you've just joined us, you're very welcome to be in our company here at NATO Days 2022 at Ostrava Airport in the Czech Republic. This is a bit of a prelude to 2 very full days of live broadcasting here on PlanesTV. Not just showing you the flying displays, of which there are many over the weekend, but also the fantastic array of ground demonstrations that always form part of NATO Day. Just in front of my commentary position here is the already extremely churned up and muddy ground demonstration area, where tanks and other military vehicles will be being put through their paces in a variety of operational scenarios. Goodness knows what that's going to look like by the time 2 days of such demonstrations are complete. But that all very much part of what's on offer here in the course of several hours on each day. The programme commencing at 9 AM local time. So if you're watching in the UK, 0800 British Summer Time. If ever there were an aeroplane that typifies the front line of NATO air power since the late 1970s, it's the type taxiing out now and being shown on your screens, the formerly General Dynamics, now Lockheed Martin F-16 Fighting Falcon. Older model F-16As and Bs, such as the one that we're going to be seeing now from the Belgian air component, very much in the throes of being retired and largely with European air forces replaced by the Lockheed Martin F-35. The Royal Norwegian Air Force having already completed that process. The Netherlands in the course of doing so, and we'll see evidence of that in the Saturday flying programme here at NATO Days, with a flypast appearance from a pair of Royal Netherlands Air Force F-35As. The F-35 likewise selected by the Belgian government to meet their future fighter needs. But in spite of the age of the aeroplane that's about to perform its rehearsal, and the Belgian F-16s are some of the oldest in the NATO inventory, it is still an outstandingly capable air combat asset, and the flying display performed by the Belgian F-16 in 2022 is one of the very best I've ever seen from this type. It seems hard to fathom how an F-16 display pilot could put on. An innovative display given the sheer number of F-16 performances we've seen over the years. But Commandant Aviateur Steven de Vries from the Belgian Air Component has certainly managed to do that in the course of his first season in the display commitment. Frieske, as he's nicknamed, hails from 10 Wing of the Belgian Air Component stationed at Kleine Brogel, and he is a very, very notable F-16 pilot indeed, because he became the first non-American pilot ever to notch up in excess of 5,000 flying hours on this aeroplane. It's obviously the type that's dominated his entire career. And you'll note that for today's performance at least, he's flying neither of the specially coloured jets that have made such an impression across the display circuit in 2022. Either the new Dream Viper special livery for the solo display, or 31 Squadron's tiger-striped jet. Instead, a standard squadron machine doing the honours for today. It was way back in June 1975 when the 4 European participating air forces, namely Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands and Norway, confirmed a deal for 348 F-16s, as well as licensed production by both Sabca in Belgium and Fokker in the Netherlands. In Belgian service, it replaced not only the Lockheed F-104 Starfighter, which was also the case in the 3 other countries I mentioned, but the Dassault Mirage 5 as well. First delivery was in January 1979. It was the first F-16 for a European air arm. And here on the roll, the F-16A MLU Fighting Falcon of the Belgian Air Component. Leaving a rooster trail of spray in its wake. It goes without saying that with changing times within the NATO alliance, the Belgian F-16 fleet has been significantly slimmed down since the end of the Cold War. 160 aircraft were delivered to Belgium initially. That fleet was slimmed down to 60, of which 48 were declared to NATO. But these are far more capable airplanes than they started out as. The MLU, the midlife upgrade, has seen to that, and it's brought these early model F-16A and B jets up to a standard of capability pretty much akin to the newer production C and D models. It's added the likes of the joint helmet-mounted cueing system for the pilot, night vision goggles, compatibility with weapons such as the GBU-38, Joint Direct Attack Munition or JDAM, and the Recce Light reconnaissance system. And further smaller updates have continued to add new mission software to see the Belgian F-16s through until retirement. In fact, only this year an upgrade of the aircraft's missile warning system was completed. And unlike with the Hornet that we just saw, Vriska has at his disposal a rather higher cloud base, in fact, a beautiful break in the cloud. And so they're performing one of several uncomfortable negative G push-ups that are a really distinctive feature of his routine. And there's another. And that sort of extended negative G manoeuvre really isn't something you see very often in a singleton fast jet display. But as we can see, negative G doesn't seem to trouble him. It took a while for the Belgian F-16s to be blooded in combat. That happened during the Balkans campaigns of the 1990s, policing the no-fly zone over Bosnia, and then 1999's Operation Allied Force. They were then involved in 2011's Operation Unified Protector actions in Libya, and more recently they've been engaged in efforts to combat the so-called Islamic State, or Daesh. In fact, it was only at the end of September last year that 4 Belgian F-16s came to the end of a year-long deployment to Jordan, having flown 293 missions over Iraq and Syria. Those comprised a mixture of combat air patrols, close air support sorties, reconnaissance missions and interdiction tasks. While back home, Belgium's F-16s share joint quick reaction alert duties for the Benelux nations with the Royal Netherlands Air Force's F-16s. The Netherlands, as I mentioned, already going through that transition from F-16 to F-35. And Belgium is set to do likewise, with first F-35 deliveries out of an order for 34 aircraft, scheduled for delivery next year. And they'll continue to arrive in Belgium over a 5-year period. Classic high angle of attack, slow pass down the line this time. And with that final knife edge, high-speed pass, a pull into the vertical. And they're changing direction swiftly to set the aircraft up for final approach. And there we see the undercarriage down. Even with the likes of the Typhoon and the Gripen amongst the more modern fast jets taking centre stage in the NATO Days programme. In fact, we're getting a final gear down run from the F-16. And there he positions downwind. Yes, even with the likes of those latest generation fighters giving solo displays on our programme this weekend, there's still very little that can beat an outstandingly flown solo F-16. And so is again shown there by the Belgian air component, by Commandant Aviateur Steven de Vries with the F-16A MLU Fighting Falcon. I believe we have a commercial arrival now, this being quite a busy airport. Expecting it in the shape of a Boeing 737 MAX from Czech Airline Travel Service. Meanwhile, as you can see on your screen, the next of our rehearsals for this afternoon is getting ready to take to the runway. Behind it, you can see one of the several US Air Force heavies that have gathered here at Ostrava for NATO Days 2022 in the form of a KC-135R Stratotanker. And that due to be brought across to the side of the airfield that we're on as part of the static display, along with the likes of a C-5M Galaxy and a B-52H Stratofortress, one of which we'll also be seeing in the flying programme on one of the days of NATO Days 2022. There's the 737 MAX 8 landing. And once it's cleared off to the civil terminal side of the airfield, that diminutive representative of the Czech Air Force that you can see in the distance on that camera shot will be taking to the runway and getting airborne. Once again, if you just joined us, a reminder that PlanesTV is broadcasting throughout Saturday and Sunday at NATO Days 2022 with a live English language stream of this outstanding modern military event. Indeed, one of the very few air shows I've attended in recent years, where civilian and warbird participation is not part of the flying. Indeed, the only civilian acts we're expecting in the show are those provided by aerospace companies, the likes of Saab and Aero Vodokody. Military involvement so strong at NATO Days 2022 that this is otherwise an exclusively in-service flying display with aircraft from across the whole breadth of the NATO alliance. On the shot we're now seeing, you can see the Czech Air Force Mi-35 running up again. We saw it airborne earlier on with the Mi-171 giving their duo display. Well, we're going to see it practicing its solo sequence before the day is out. We'll be here right from the start of the display programme at Ostrava on both show days, and that means an early start, 0900 hours, the local time that the display will be beginning here, so 0800 British summertime, but do join us. We'll be here on air from then right the way through until the show finishes, which tomorrow occurs at just gone 5:30 according to the current schedule. And landing on another of the NATO partner nations to be represented here at Ostrava, the very welcome sight of a McDonnell Douglas CF-188, the Royal Canadian Air Force designation for the FA-18 Hornet. Not often seen in Europe these days. That among the last of today's scheduled arrivals. It'll be backtracking the runway and exiting at the far left-hand end as we look out towards the runway to be towed into the static display, which boasts one of the most varied lineups of NATO aircraft to be seen at any event in Europe this year. And as part of putting that static display together, the larger aircraft on the far side of the runway from us, which were positioned there on arrival, are shortly to be, I believe, taxied along the runway, ready to be towed into their final positions for the weekend. You can see lights flashing on both the C5M and C-17A. The presence of these US Air Force heavies, a sign of the importance that the United States attaches to NATO Days. And this is especially apparent given the security situation we find ourselves in Europe in 2022. There's the Canadian CF-188 backtracking the runway. These aircraft, of course, such regular sights on the European scene during the Cold War years when Canada maintained a strong military presence with air assets stationed in Germany. The CF-188s replacing CF-104 starfighters, with the squadron stationed at Baden-Zillingen in Germany. But their withdrawal in the early 1990s has seen these aircraft becoming increasingly rare birds, only on occasional visits for air shows, as in 2018 when the CF-188 demo team came over for shows at Yeovilton and Fairford, or if the aircraft happened to be on deployment to Europe. Do we tend to see them nowadays at shows in Europe? And also on the far side of the airfield, the C5M Galaxy is now on the move. But in fact, it's the solo Mi-35 that we are going to see first, performing its rehearsal. The final time we expect that NATO Days will see the Hind battlefield helicopter in Czech Air Force service on the programme, because these mighty machines haven't got very long to run with this air arm. Their retirement expected around the end of this year, beginning of next, as the Czech Air Force look towards the future with the Bell UH-1Y and AH-1Z replacing the Hind in its infantry. This from the 221st Helicopter Squadron at Náměšť nad Oslavou. It was 40 years ago this year, in 1982, that the first Mi-24D models of the Hind entered service with what was then, of course, still the Czechoslovak Air Force. The Mi-24V model followed from 1985. This is the export version of that, the Mi-35. Because following on from the supply of 62 Hinds to Czechoslovakia from 1982 to 92, a further batch of 10 new Mi-35s was received by the Czech Republic for its Air Force in 2003, taken on as part payment of a Russian debt. 34 of the originals were also assumed by the new Czech Air Force when Czechoslovakia split up. The type generally used for close air support duties, also employed in the combat search and rescue role, forming a team with the Mi-171s that we saw earlier in that role. And the Czechs with their Hinds have also supported the training of Hind crews for the new Afghan Air Force. The 221st Helicopter Squadron, one of two Czech Air Force units to be a member of the NATO Tiger Association, the organisation that brings together squadrons from across the alliance that have tigers or certain other big cats in their emblems. The other being the 211th Tactical Squadron at Čáslav on the Gripen, which we'll also see represented in the flying displays this weekend. And of course, a crucial feature of the Czech Hinds is that they've been upgraded for full NATO compatibility. So these have been an important contributor to the alliance since the Czech Republic joined as a full member in 1999. But although their retirement is imminent, the Czech Hinds have been subject to a recent major overhaul by the Czech aerospace company LOM Praha. That work could, in theory, see them carry on flying until around 2045, but from next year, as I mentioned, the UH-1Y and AH-1Z are due to start arriving in the Czech Republic as replacements. This is a squadron, incidentally, that's very proud of its heritage. The base at Náměšť nad Oslavou holds the traditions of the only Czechoslovak bomber squadron of World War II, number 311 Squadron, Royal Air Force, which flew first Vickers Wellingtons and then Consolidated Liberators. What an impressive juxtaposition that is, the Hind above the taxiing C5M Galaxy. Major Václav Spadček of the Czech Air Force with the Mi-35 Hind. One of two Hinds we're going to see in the flying programme this weekend, the other coming from the Hungarian Air Force. The C-5M that we were just seeing taxiing in, provided here by the 433rd Airlift Wing, a US Air Force Reserve Command component stationed at the Kelly Field Annex of Joint Base San Antonio, Texas. The C-5M, of course, the latest upgraded model of the Galaxy family in US Air Force service. Now the last of our scheduled rehearsals, an aircraft extremely far removed from the C-5. A Czech-built aeroplane, and here we see it in Czech Air Force service. Starting his display from on high, one of the leading aerobatic performers in the country, Martin Schonker, with the Zlin 142 CAF. Martin, the winner of the 2018 Red Bull Air Race World Series. He's a former Czech Air Force Gripen pilot who took up competition and display aerobatics. And here we see him flying one of 8 Zlin 142 CAFs, and doing so in absolutely outstanding fashion. These aircraft used as basic trainers for students at the Czech University of Defence in Brno, and also for the training of students from certain foreign nations. The aircraft first entered service with the Czech Air Force in 1995, doing so with the 343rd Training Squadron, which operated the Zlin 142 on the fixed wing side and the Mil Mai 2, the hoplite, as the basic rotary wing trainer. But since the end of 2003, beginning of 2004, the fleet of Zlins was transferred to the Aviation Training Centre in Czech, the CLV, still stationed at their former base at Pardubice. And it's with that organisation that they continue to fly. The entire fleet has notched up now well in excess of 20,000 flying hours, that milestone having been reached during a solo flight by a student in June 2020. This part of a family of light trainers and tourers produced by the Moravan factory. The basic model being the Zlin 42. The 142, a development of that. As indeed is the 242, which was 30 years ago now put forward as a contender for the Royal Air Force's de Havilland Chipmunk replacement contract. A role eventually fulfilled with the air experience flights and university air squadrons by the Grob G115 Tutor. A very well established design, this, the Zlin 42, dating from 1967, and the 142 that we see here from 1978. (210 horsepower from the Valter M337 six-cylinder engine, which on the 242 has given way to a power plant of Western origin, the Lycoming IO 360. But as we saw, an exceptionally capable aeroplane in the right hands. Martin Schonkers certainly are that. And there he is coming into land, landing very, very long. The parking apron for the flying display aircraft, or most of them at least, located far up to the right-hand end of the airfield as we look out towards the runway. So Martin reducing his taxiing time. And that is going to be an exceptional display at the weekend by one of the top aerobatic pilots in the Czech Republic. And so with that, we bring our live stream of rehearsals on this Friday here at NATO Days 2022 to a close. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and we hope you'll be back with us at the weekend. As I say, if you're in the UK, we get underway at 0800 British Summer Time on both mornings, 0900 local time here in the Czech Republic. We look forward very much to welcoming you here to PlanesTV and enjoying this brilliant air show and the fantastic ground demonstrations, which are such a huge part of this event with us. Thank you for your company this Friday afternoon. Have a lovely evening and hopefully see you tomorrow. Goodbye.